The edge of known space was quiet, too quiet, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. Captain Elias Monroe sat in the pilot's chair of the Dauntless Whisper, his eyes scanning the soft flickers of data on his navigation screen. The freighter hummed softly, drifting past the edge of a gas giant's rings. Elias was a lone trader, once a soldier, now a wanderer, who liked peace and preferred silence. But that silence was broken when a weak distress signal crackled through the comms. Static tore through the message, but he caught enough to know it was a Mayday call coordinates, emergency code, and nothing more. Most pilots would have ignored it. The signal came from deep within the Gravemist expanse, a region marked red on every chart, a place where ships disappeared and were never heard from again. A few called it cursed. Others called it cursed and accurate. Elias knew the risks. But something about the desperation in the signal held him. With a heavy sigh, he keyed in the coordinates and changed course, as the Whisper descended through a band of metallic clouds. The dying moon beneath revealed itself cracked, dry, and glowing faintly with radiation from a shattered core. Wreckage lay half-buried in dust, a sleek diplomatic cruiser, its hull scorched and broken. Elias approached with caution, weapons primed, scanners active, no life signs at first. Then, just before he turned back, a flicker-weak biosigns, 4 of them. He landed quickly, sealing his helmet and grabbing his medkit. Inside the ship, emergency lights blinked in red, casting long shadows. The air was thin. Sparks jumped from broken panels, and then he saw them, 4 figures huddled together behind a bulkhead. Barely conscious. Each was alien, each different from the next. One had pale, iridescent skin and eyes that glowed faintly blue varella. Later, he would learn a psionic. Diplomat from the Ellerin. Beside her was a tall, armored woman with dark violet scales and a damaged arm Catheri, on the warrior Dravaki clans. On the floor sat a small, insectoid figure with trembling limbs, Nixie, a young tech genius from the Lysari hives. The 4th was sprawled in a shattered cryopod, her gills fluttering weakly, Sella, an aquatic healer from the ocean world Arain. They were diplomats, Elias guessed, or at least travelers with a high purpose. Oh, their ship was no cargo vessel. Elias worked fast, connecting life support tubes, patching up wounds, and stabilizing their oxygen. The girls barely stirred, too weak to speak. His hands moved without thinking, muscle memory from his military days kicking in. He didn't ask himself why he was helping strangers in a dead zone. He just knew he couldn't leave them. As he moved, to restore external power to their systems. The Whisper's alert rang in his ear-long range. Sensors had picked up incoming ships. Multiple. Fast. He ran outside and checked his console. The shapes were familiar. Pirate cruisers, the same type that likely attacked the diplomats. They were returning, likely drawn by the same distress signal Elias had followed. His mind raced. He could leave now. He had time. The Whisper was still. Functional, still fast enough to outrun the pirates. No one would blame him for running. These girls weren't his responsibility. But as he looked back into the shattered cruiser and saw Varela trying to sit up, eyes cloudy with pain, something shifted inside him. These girls had no weapons, no strength left, and no way out. They didn't know him. They probably didn't even trust him. But they were alive, and if he left, they wouldn't stay that way for long. Elias took a breath and activated his ship's defense grid. His freighter wasn't built for battle, but he had added a few surprises over the years. Missiles hidden in false cargo holds, pulse cannons carved from salvaged warships, a shield generator powered by an old military core. Not perfect, but maybe enough. He ran a quick systems check, then looked back at the broken ship. "Hang on," he muttered, not sure if he was talking to them or himself. The pirates would arrive in minutes. The Gravemist expanse had turned into a trap, and Elias had just stepped right into it. But he wasn't about to run. Not yet. Not when there was still someone left to save. The Gravemist expanse was never truly dark. Strange. Lights drifted through the space like silent ghosts, glowing just enough to make a pilot doubt his eyes. Elias Monroe stood at the ramp of the Dauntless Whisper, watching the stars shift as the pirate vessels moved closer. 3 of them light raiders, fast and built for ambush. Their engines flared like angry eyes, hungry for wreckage and easy prey. Elias clenched his jaw, running through the plan again in his head. He didn't like the odds, but it was too late to back out. Inside the downed alien cruiser, the four girls remained weak. Elias had done what he could, but without a proper medbay, their condition was fragile. Virella, the psionic Ellerin, had regained just enough awareness to speak. Roar's worth was soft, as if each word cost her energy. "You could have left," she whispered. Elias just shook his head. "Yeah, I could have. But that's not how I do things." She closed her eyes again, but the smallest smile touched her lips. He sealed the doors and powered up the Whisper's external shields. A small drone zipped from the underside of his ship and buried itself in the dirt near the wreck, forming a temporary barrier around the cruiser. It wouldn't hold forever, but it might buy some time. He wasn't planning to fight head-on. He'd never win that way. But if he could outthink them, outfly them, he had a shot. The pirates hailed him. Before firing, just as expected, their voice came through with static, rough, and mocking. "Unidentified ship? This is Captain Drex of the Black Talon. That wreck is ours. Move along, and we'll let you go." Elias pressed the cum and answered calmly, "Appreciate the offer, Drex, but I think I'll stay." There was a long pause. Then laughter. "You've got guts, human. Let's see if you bleed." The first pirate ship opened fire. Elias slammed the controls. The Whisper launched into the air, dodging plasma bolts as they tore through the dust. His ship was heavier than theirs, but he'd flown it for years. He knew every shudder of the hull, every twist of the engines. He led the pirates away from the wreckage, making them follow. They didn't care about him. They wanted what was left on the ground. All he had to do was distract them long enough. Inside the freighter, alerts blared. Shields dropped to 70%, then 50%. Elias twisted between rock pillars and crater edges, trying to stay one step ahead. One of the pirate ships broke. Off, circling back toward the wounded cruiser. Elias cursed and fired a missile direct hit. The pirate ship spun out, smoking, but still flying. Back on the moon's surface, Cathari had awakened. The Dravaki warrior, still weak but furious, pulled herself up and stared at the fading shield protecting them.
Ow.
She saw one pirate ship, approaching low and fast. Gritting her teeth, she limped to the wreck's weapon console. The system was nearly dead, but one turret still had power. She rerouted energy, aimed at herself, and waited until the pirate came close enough. One clean shot. The turret roared, and the bolt struck the side of the pirate vessel. Fire burst from its hull as it spiraled down and exploded in a nearby crater. The impact shook the ground, but the ship was gone. Elias caught the blast from the sky. "Nice shot," he muttered. 2 left. He fired another volley at the second, damaging its engines. The last one stayed back, circling wide, too smart to rush. Elias knew what that meant. They were preparing to send in ground troops. Sure enough. Minutes later, a dropship launched from the remaining raider. It dove toward the cruiser wreck. Elias cursed under his breath. Couldn't intercept in time. His ship was already battered, smoke filling the cockpit. He rerouted power to the weapons and sped toward the dropship anyway. On the ground, Sella and Nixie worked together. Sella had enough strength to move now, her gills pulsing steadily. Nixie, though frightened, had the clever fingers of a born mechanic. They rigged a power surge through the shield drone, hoping to fry anything that crossed the barrier. The dropship landed nearby, and pirates jumped out, weapons ready. The shield crackled and snapped with a pulse of energy that knocked 2 of them down, but it wouldn't hold. Just when the pirates regrouped, Elias dropped in behind them like a hawk. The Whisper's guns lit the surface, cutting across the pirates' line. Dirt exploded, fire tore across their armor, and the dropship caught a direct blast to its engine, bursting in flame. The remaining pirate ship, seeing the battle turn, didn't wait, turned away and jumped into hyperspace, abandoning the fight. Silence fell over the moon. Elias landed again, heart pounding, systems failing, hull scorched, but alive. He ran to the wreck, where the girls looked up at him tired, injured, and staring at him like he'd just turned the stars themselves. Cathari nodded slowly. Varela whispered something in her language that sounded like a blessing. Sella smiled with tear-filled eyes. Nixie just clung to his arm. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The silence after the battle felt almost unreal, smoke still. Rose from the craters, and the broken pirate ship crackled as fire slowly died in its hull. But for the first time in hours, there was no sound of engines or weapons, only the soft hiss of cooling metal and the breath of survivors. Elias stood among the wreckage, scanning the area. The 4 alien girls were alive. That was what mattered inside. The damaged alien cruiser, Elias, set up a portable shelter. It wasn't much, just a small bubble of safety. It's created by emergency walls and a power core from the Whisper, but it was warm and secure. The girls were resting now, their wounds treated. With what little supplies he had, they lay on soft mats, while the shelter glowed dimly, its light steady against the eerie skies of the Gravemist moon. Varela was the first to fully regain her strength. She sat quietly, her long silver hair falling over her shoulders as she watched Elias work. "You shouldn't have stayed," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were full of feeling. Elias didn't look at her, just kept adjusting the generator. "I know," he said, "but I did." There was a long pause. Then she smiled, just slightly. "Thank you." Cathari, the Draviki warrior, was still recovering. Her injuries had been deeper than the rest, but she insisted on standing. Her strength returned quickly, and her sharp red eyes followed Elias everywhere. "You are not a soldier," she said to him one night, while sharpening a broken blade. "But you fought like one." Elias looked at her, surprised. "I was never trained, just learned by surviving." Cathari nodded once, slowly. "That is the best way." Stella, the gentle Marinelle, spent most of her time near the portable garden Elias had activated. She liked the soft colors and the sound of the growing plants. Her people were water dwellers, peaceful and kind. When Elias brought her a small container of purified liquid from the Whisper's stores, her eyes filled with tears. "You remembered," she whispered. "You saw my gills, and remembered." Elias shrugged, a little embarrassed, just doing what made sense. Then there was Nixie, small, bright-eyed, and always moving. Even when she was weak, she asked questions. She wanted to see the engines, the weapons, the control panels. She watched Elias with wide eyes as he repaired their comm system. "You're amazing," she said once. Elias chuckled. "No, just stubborn." She grinned. "Stubborn and amazing." Then, day by day, the strange bond between them grew. These 4 alien women had come from different worlds, different cultures, different beliefs. But now, all of them had one thing in common. Elias Monroe had saved them. Not for reward, not for fame, just because he could. Late one night, as a false twilight passed across the moon's surface, the comm system finally came online. A signal went out, weak but steady. A rescue was possible now. Elias leaned back against the wall of the shelter, exhausted. His freighter was still in bad shape, and his supplies were almost gone. But help was on the way. The girls sat around a small heat lamp, their faces glowing in the soft light. They spoke in low voices, switching between their native tongues and the galactic trade language. Elias pretended to sleep nearby, but he listened. He didn't hesitate, Sella whispered. "No, didn't," Varela agreed. "He risked his life for strangers," Cathari said. Nixie looked over at Elias, then back at the others. "What if he's the one?" They all fell quiet. It was strange even to them how fast they had come to care for him. Maybe it was the fear they had faced together. Maybe it was the trust he had shown. Or maybe, deep down, they each saw something in Elias Monroe that their worlds no longer had on her. Courage, heart. The next morning, a small rescue vessel appeared in orbit. Elias guided it down carefully, helping the team land near the wreck. They were officials from a neutral alliance, clean uniforms, polite voices, and careful questions. The girls were offered protection and transport back to their home systems. Elias was thanked formally, offered a bounty payment for his bravery. He refused the money. The officials looked confused. You risked your life? You deserve this. Elias just shook his head. I didn't do it for credits. He turned back to the girls. One by one, they came to him. Varela touched his cheek gently with her glowing fingers. My people will never forget this. Cathari gave a deep warrior's bow. You have the heart of a protector. Sela embraced him softly, whispering thanks in her native song-like voice. And Nixie looked up at him and smiled. Don't go far. You might get 4 calls real soon. As they left aboard the rescue ship, Elias stood alone on the quiet moon. The dauntless Whisper was still standing, still flying. He looked at the stars and thought about what came next, because something had changed in them and in him. Captain Elias Monroe didn't expect to become a name people whispered across space lanes. He returned to his usual life, flying the dauntless Whisper, taking small jobs, staying out of trouble. Damn. But the galaxy didn't forget what he did on that dying moon in the gravest expanse. Word spread like light through the void. As first as a rumor, then as a story, and finally as something more. The human who fought pirates to save for noble daughters. People told the tale in bars on freighters, even in high halls of power. It began with a message, encrypted, clean, from VIR, Ella. Elias, I hope you're flying safe. My house wants to thank you properly. They've even discussed naming a star after you. But more than that, I'd just like to see you again. He stared at the message for a long time, then he smiled. Soon came another. Cathari's message was shorter. Blunt, like her. Human. If you ever find yourself near Dravik Prime, you'll be under my protection. You are honored among warriors. I'm training again. Stronger, faster. I want to spar with you someday, just to see if you're lucky, or truly skilled. Elias chuckled. He hadn't fought with skill that day. Only instinct and grit. Then came Sela's voice, calm and soft like running water. I have begun painting again. I'm safe now, because of you. My family asked if you were real. I said you were. Real than anything. If your journey ever brings you to our world, the seas will welcome you. He leaned back in the captain's chair, staring into the stars. Then, as expected, came Naishi. Hey. Sue, I might have told my people everything. They want to meet you. And no pressure, but they also want to give you a medal. It's also maybe a ship. Also, maybe my hand in marriage. Just kidding. Unless... Okay, I'm kidding, but seriously. Elias, don't disappear on us. The universe feels smaller without you. Elias closed the message with a smile that didn't fade for a while. But peace was short-lived. He started noticing strange movements. Jobs that suddenly disappeared. Contacts. Avoiding him. Even a shady bounty post under his name cleared quickly, but still suspicious. Someone wasn't happy that he had saved those girls. Someone powerful. One night, while docked on a fringe station, a woman approached him in the shadows of a cargo bay. She wore a long coat and moved like someone who didn't want to be seen. You're Monroe, she said. He nodded slowly. They're watching you, she whispered. Some of those pirates? Yes. They weren't just pirates. They were hired to make sure those envoys never made it to the summit. Elias narrowed his eyes. Who hired them? I don't know, she said, her voice trembling, but someone with deep credits. And now they want to tie up loose ends. Be careful, Captain. You didn't just save lives. You exposed a secret. She vanished before he could ask more. He left the station that same night, engines burning hot through the dark. Days passed, then came the shock. The galactic networks lit up with a headline. Ambassador Sela survives assassination attempt. Elias's. Heart froze. He opened the article. She was safe, but barely. Her security had stopped the attackers in time. Rumors tied the attempt to old pirate group's scattered remnants. Desperate to silence her, he didn't wait. He turned the dauntless Whisper toward her planet. But he wasn't the only one. Messages poured in from all 4 girls. All different. All urgent. Cathari. They're targeting us, one by one. They think fear will silence us. They're wrong. Varela. They think I'm weak because I believe in peace. But peace must be protected. Elias, I need you here. Nixie, I tracked a data trail. Something big is behind this. I'm sending you the info. Don't trust anyone wearing a suit without dirt on their boots. The conspiracy was real. Elias didn't know who was behind it yet. But someone had gone to great lengths to destroy a diplomatic mission. 4 noble daughters from 4 powerful species taken out in one stroke would have sparked war. Worse. But they survived. Because of one stubborn human who chose to care. Now, it was more than survival. It was justice. As Elias approached the peaceful blue world of Sella's people, he noticed something else: other ships in orbit. One bore the colors of Catherine's warrior house. Another was sleek and golden from Varela's royal fleet. A small, fast, dart-shaped ship blinked into view near his hull. Nixie, no doubt. They had come to not as victims, but as witnesses. As fighters, as friends, and maybe, just maybe, something more. The 4 girls who had once clung to life on a dying moon were now leaders of a quiet rebellion, one that stood for truth, peace, and the strength of unlikely bonds. And at the heart of it all was a lone human trader who had once just wanted to fly under the stars, alone. Not anymore. Captain Elias Monroe had never wanted to be a hero. He just wanted to live free, fly between stars, and keep to himself. But now, he stood in the heart of something far bigger than any one mana storm that had. Started with a broken ship on a dying moon and 4 alien girls who refused to give up, and at its center was the dauntless Whisper, the old freighter that now carried more secrets than any vault in the galaxy. The 4 had reunited on Sela's world, a place of oceans and shimmering skies. The reunion was warm but brief. Each had arrived with guards, data, and warnings. Catherine's house had intercepted coded messages, threats, plans, cover-ups. Varela brought diplomatic records showing canceled meetings and altered logs. Nixie hacked into a private network and found encrypted orders that led to shadow accounts and dead agents. And Sella had a painting. It was quiet and blue and full of stars, but she had painted a Shapilius's ship hovering in the center, like a lighthouse in a storm. It was time to reveal the truth. Together, they planned a 10 emergency broadcast across the major star systems. A message not just for leaders, but for everyone. A message of what really happened in the gravamist expanse. About how a noble peace envoy was betrayed from within. About the pirates who were hired. About the people who wanted war instead of unity. And how one human, with no power or rank, chose to save lives. They launched the signal from a deep relay satellite hidden in the outer moons. It was a bold move, dangerous, public, irreversible, and it worked. Within hours, the galaxy responded. The media exploded. Some called it a hoax. Others demanded trials. Protests broke out on core worlds. Investigations were opened. The names of high-ranking officials appeared in leaked documents. Some vanished. Some were arrested. Some tried to fight back, but the truth had already taken root. Elias became a symbol. It's not because he wanted to be, but because people saw something in his story. Not just courage, but hope. That one person could still make a difference. He didn't. Stop flying. He still took jobs. Still fixed his ship with spare parts and duct tape. But now, wherever he went, people recognized him. A nod in a spaceport. A free drink at a station bar. A quiet thank you whispered by someone who had seen the broadcast, and the girls, they didn't disappear back into their worlds. Cathari returned to her warrior council and demanded change. She started training young defenders, not just to fight, but to protect those without weapons. She became a legend on her planet. But she always kept a communicator linked to Elias. Varela became her world's youngest ever ambassador. She helped rewrite peace laws and brokered a historic agreement between rival species. And when she spoke at the summit, she wore a pin shaped like the dauntless Whisper. Sella's paintings became famous. One, called The Stranger Who Stayed, was placed in the Grand Museum of the Unity Worlds. She sent Elias a copy, hand-painted, No prince, just for him. Nixie. She started a resistance of information, an underground network that hunted truth, tracked corruption, and shone light into dark places. People called her the Laughing Flame. She still joked, still sent Elias cryptic messages. Beneath her humor was sharp purpose. As for Elias, he didn't change much. Still quiet, still stubborn. But something in him had softened. Maybe because he had people who had once begged him not to leave, not out of fear, but because they had found safety in him. And he, unexpectedly, had found home in them. One quiet evening, years later, Elias sat in the cockpit of his old ship, drifting near a glowing nebula. The stars outside pulsed like slow heartbeats. A message came through, encrypted, familiar. Virella, the council offered to name that star after you. You never gave them an answer. He smiled. Another message blinked in. Nixie, so, still single? Or are we finally picking teams? Just saying. 4 offers are still valid. Elias laughed softly to himself. The ship's lights blinked gently. Then Cathari chimed in. If you come to Dravik, bring sparring gear. And dinner. Finally, Sella's soft voice followed. You once said you didn't belong anywhere. But you do. Here, with us. Always. Elias leaned back and looked at the star. Outside, he sent one reply. Name it Whisper. Because that ship, and that moment, had changed everything. Not just for him, not just for 4 girls from different worlds, but for a galaxy that almost forgot what hope looked like.